Have you ever stopped to think about how a trade dispute between two superpowers can change the course of your everyday life? And how the choices governments make regarding technologies like semiconductors and artificial intelligence can influence the future of industries, financial markets, and even your personal finances? In recent years, trade tensions between the United States and China have intensified, creating an increasingly volatile global environment. From tariffs and restrictions on tech companies to a quiet war for critical resources like rare earths, the impact of this dispute goes far beyond the borders of these two countries. It affects how we buy, invest, and even how we live. In this video, we will analyze how trade policies and technological restrictions are shaping global trade and consequently, the world economy. How does this affect high-tech companies? And how might it influence the currency we use and our investment options? If you're interested in the future of the global economy, emerging markets, or even how trade tensions might impact your wallet, this video is for you. Stay until the end to understand what's at stake in this scenario and what you need to know to stay ahead of the global economic future. In recent years, trade tensions between the United States and China have taken center stage, not only because they are two of the largest economies in the world, but also because their disputes are affecting the global economic playing field. What seemed like just a matter of tariffs and taxes quickly turned into a complex trade war, with lasting consequences for all the countries involved. It all began in 2018, when President Donald Trump, citing trade imbalances and intellectual property issues, imposed heavy tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars in Chinese products. China's response was immediate. It raised tariffs on U.S. goods, mainly affecting the agricultural sector and other manufactured products. However, the core of the conflict was not limited to market issues. At its heart, it was a fight for technological leadership, with the U.S. trying to maintain its supremacy in the tech sector, while China, with its innovation strategy and massive investments, sought to achieve technological self-sufficiency. What many don't know is that behind these disputes lies a battle for control over critical technologies, semiconductors, artificial intelligence, AI, 5G, and even rare earth materials essential for high-tech industries like electronics and electric vehicles. These items are the foundation of the 21st century technological revolution, and whoever controls these resources will have a decisive advantage in the future global economy. In 2019, the US added Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications giant, to its list of banned companies, citing national security risks due to suspected espionage. This move was an attempt to undermine Chinese tech companies, but it also triggered a domino effect, causing other countries to rethink their alliances and trade strategies. The consequences of this confrontation between the world's two largest economies quickly reverberated across the globe. Tariffs began to impact consumers in both countries, with price increases and supply chain disruptions. However, the most significant impact was on high-tech industries. U.S. companies faced million-dollar losses by losing access to the Chinese market, while China accelerated the development of its own alternatives, heavily investing in semiconductors and AI areas where it had heavily relied on Western technologies. Amid this, financial markets also experienced volatility, with investors being forced to reconsider their portfolios and strategies. The depreciation of currencies, such as the Chinese yuan, and instability in stock markets, reflected the risks associated with this unprecedented trade dispute. And while all of this was happening, a new player emerged, the BRICS. Formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the BRICS have positioned themselves as an alternative to the global financial system dominated by the dollar. But what does this really mean? How are these nations positioning themselves to mitigate the impact of the US-China trade war, and how are they working to build a financial system parallel to the West? When we talk about cutting-edge technology, one of the most critical items is semiconductors. They are the foundation for nearly all modern technological innovation, from smartphones and computers to electric cars and supercomputers. Because of this, access to these crucial components has become one of the biggest points of friction between the US and China. In 2018, the United States imposed a series of restrictions on the export of semiconductors and manufacturing equipment to Chinese companies such as SMIC, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, China's largest chip maker. The goal was to slow China's technological progress by preventing it from developing its own advanced chip production capabilities, which are essential for the AI, 5G, and autonomous vehicle industries. However, China responded quickly. With the support of the Chinese government, the country began investing massively in research and development, R&D, to create domestic alternatives. By 2020, China had become the world's largest consumer of semiconductors, yet it still relied heavily on imports to meet its demand. With the trade war and US restrictions, China accelerated its strategy to develop alternatives, such as domestically produced silicon chips. However, while progress has been significant, the country still faces technological challenges, as some cutting-edge technologies remain beyond its internal production capacity. Another crucial sector in this scenario is artificial intelligence. AI is reshaping global economies, with applications in areas like healthcare, transportation, security, and finance. The country that dominates this technology will not only have an economic advantage, but also a geopolitical one. The US has traditionally led the AI field with companies like Google, Microsoft, and Tesla at the forefront. However, China, with its vast database and processing power, has been accelerating AI development, especially in areas like facial recognition, process automation, and autonomous vehicles. The rivalry between the two countries over AI is not just technological, but also political. In 2018, the Chinese government announced a plan to become the global leader in AI by 2030, and this goal is reflected in policies to incentivize the private sector and develop infrastructure. For the US, this represents a threat not only to its technological leadership, but also to national security, as AI technologies could be used in sensitive areas like surveillance, defense, and cybersecurity. This battle for emerging technologies is not happening in a vacuum. It has profound implications for global geopolitics. Disputes over control of technological resources like semiconductors and AI are shaping new alliances and creating new divisions between countries. For example, while the US imposes restrictions on China, the Asian country strengthens its collaboration with nations not aligned with the West, such as Russia, Iran, and even African and Latin American countries. The result is a technological fragmentation, where different economic blocs are seeking to become self-sufficient in key areas for innovation. The tensions over these emerging technologies also have a significant impact on global trade, as we depend on a global supply network to obtain these essential components. When the flow of semiconductors and AI components is restricted, industries everywhere from smartphone manufacturing to electric vehicle production can face serious disruptions. The effect is a slowdown in global technological innovation and rising costs, which inevitably impacts consumers and businesses alike. Let's take a quick break. If you're enjoying the video so far, could we ask for a small favor? Clicking the like button helps us reach a broader audience, and sharing your thoughts or feedback in the comments makes an even bigger impact. Thanks for watching. Let's dive back in. As trade tensions between the world's two largest economies have worsened, global supply chains have started to experience significant disruptions. Trade between the United States and China is not just a simple exchange of goods and services, but an interconnected web of electronic components, raw materials, and even specialized labor. Since 2018, with the implementation of import and export tariffs and more recently, restrictions on sensitive technologies, companies have been facing growing uncertainty about the future of their operations. The clearest example of this is semiconductors, a product that crosses multiple borders before reaching the final market. US tech companies rely on raw material suppliers from China, while Chinese factories depend on high-tech manufacturing equipment from the United States. When any link in this chain is cut, the consequences reverberate across various industries worldwide. Automotive companies, for instance, faced a chip shortage during the pandemic, leading to reduced production and increased prices. Furthermore, trade tensions are forcing companies to rethink their production strategies. The concept of nearshoring, which involves bringing factories back to the United States or to nearby countries, has gained momentum, especially with the support of policies incentivizing domestic manufacturing. While this strategy helps reduce dependence on foreign markets, it also imposes high costs and logistical challenges, as companies must reconfigure their supply chains, train local labor, and often deal with stricter regulations. While the United States and China are the main protagonists in this trade war, the consequences are not limited to just these two countries. Emerging economies such as Vietnam, India, and Mexico, for example, have started to become alternatives for the production of manufactured goods like electronics and clothing, which previously came from China. This shift could represent growth opportunities for these countries, but it also presents challenges, such as the need to quickly adapt to market demands and the pressure for quality and innovation. However, this change also creates instability in global markets. The increase in import tariffs and uncertainty about future trade policies make it difficult to predict prices and the availability of goods. For developed markets, this fluctuation can lead to higher production costs, which in turn results in higher prices for consumers and reduced purchasing power. In the case of the European Union, interdependence with both powers also makes the situation delicate. While the EU is drawn to growth opportunities in Asia, the need to maintain strong trade relations with the United States, its largest economic partner, creates diplomatic tension. EU countries like Germany, which depend on exporting vehicles and equipment to China, also feel the direct effects of the slowdown in trade between these two powers. Finally, the impact of trade tensions cannot be ignored by global investors. The increasing uncertainty around trade policies and import-export restrictions has caused many financial analysts to reassess their growth forecasts. Changes in supply chains, rising production costs, and the evolution of currency policies, such as tensions over the dollar and the rise of alternative currencies, make investing in international markets increasingly volatile. Investors need to rethink their strategies. Portfolio diversification, which has always been a common tactic to reduce risks, becomes even more relevant. However, even with diversification, uncertainty remains a constant factor that directly impacts financial returns. This scenario requires continuous preparation and adjustments to expectations, given the potential for disruption in global supply chains. The search for alternatives to the dollar is one of the key themes when analyzing the impact of global trade tensions. Since the end of World War II, the dollar has been the world's reserve currency, with the United States maintaining control over a large portion of international reserves and trade transactions. However, the rise of protectionist policies and the economic sanctions imposed by the United States, such as those related to trade with Russia and China, have led countries to reconsider their dependence on the dollar. Dollarization is not a simple task. While some countries, like China and Russia, have been seeking alternatives for some time, primarily through bilateral agreements in local currencies or using the Chinese yuan and Russian ruble, these initiatives face significant obstacles. The main difficulty lies in the lack of a robust global financial system that can compete with the existing infrastructure surrounding the dollar. International financial institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank still operate primarily in dollars, which makes the implementation of an effective parallel system challenging. Still, advancements in alternatives such as blockchain and CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, represent a real possibility of redefining the dollar's role in global trade. For example, China has been testing its own digital currency, the digital yuan, to facilitate international transactions and reduce its dependence on the Western financial system. Should these innovations solidify, they could create a new global financial ecosystem that is more decentralized and less susceptible to U.S. monetary policies. Another significant move is the strengthening of the BRICS bloc: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries, which represent a significant portion of the global economy and a growing share of the world's population, have been increasingly seeking alternatives to the U.S.-dominated Western financial model. In recent years, the BRICS have discussed creating a common currency that could help mitigate the consequences of sanctions and dollar volatility. The idea of a common BRICS currency is still in its early stages, but it reflects these countries' desire to promote a more multilateral financial system, less dependent on Western powers. Furthermore, the BRICS have been strengthening their position in alternative payment infrastructure, such as creating their own development banks, which fund projects outside the scope of the IMF or World Bank. These efforts suggest that, even amid the growing trade dispute between the United States and China, there is movement to build a more balanced and diversified economic network. While the dollar remains dominant, it is important to note that other economic powers are also seeking to break free from this dependence. The European Union, for example, has been working to strengthen the euro as an alternative currency. The introduction of the European Payment System, INSTEX, created to enable trade transactions between EU countries and Iran without using the dollar, is one attempt to bypass US sanctions. Although the euro has advanced as a reference currency in various global trade transactions, it is still far from threatening the dollar's dominance. Additionally, Japan and South Korea are other examples of countries seeking greater monetary autonomy, even within the context of international trade dominated by the United States. These powers have been encouraging multilateral cooperation and creating new trade agreements to reduce dependence on the dollar, while simultaneously strengthening their own economies through technological innovations and strategic agreements with emerging markets. As the world moves away from the paradigm of a single dominant currency, we are witnessing the birth of a new commercial order. The increasing diversification of international reserves, the digitalization of finance, and the strengthening of alternative economic blocs indicate that the global trade system is undergoing a profound transition. However, despite these advances, the trade tensions between the United States and China remain a decisive factor in how trade will be structured in the coming decades. If developing countries and emerging economies succeed in building a more solid cooperation network, this could reduce the inequality that the current global financial system imposes, where the United States largely dictates the rules. However, for these alternatives to materialize sustainably, more than just political will is required. Structural changes in the global financial system, along with lasting commitments between nations, will be necessary to ensure stability and trust. As trade tensions between global powers, such as the United States and China, intensify, we are witnessing the birth of a new geopolitical configuration. These disputes not only affect the countries directly involved, but also reverberate through regional economies and global markets, altering power dynamics that have dominated the world economy in recent decades. In a scenario of increasing multipolarity, other powers like the European Union, India, and the BRICS nations are positioning themselves to exert greater influence over international trade, in addition to shaping new strategic alliances. This move toward multipolarity brings both new opportunities and challenges. On one hand, the diversity of economic blocs can foster greater innovation, especially in the technology and energy industries, as different countries develop new trade models. On the other hand, the fragmentation of trade alliances can result in stricter economic barriers, investment restrictions, and growing economic uncertainty that can directly affect global companies and capital mobility. The increase in tariffs and trade barriers tends to reduce the efficiency of global supply chains, which in turn can lead to higher production costs and shortages of essential materials for key industries such as electronics, semiconductors, and renewable energy. For example, a possible deglobalization of semiconductor supply chains could lead to chip shortages in countries that rely on imports, such as Europe and the United States. The technology industry will be one of the most affected by these tensions. The trade of semiconductors, essential components for everything from smartphones to artificial intelligence and defense systems, is already being drastically altered. With the imposition of trade restrictions between the United States and China, the global chip trade has been severely impacted. This could accelerate the decentralization of semiconductor production, with new innovation hubs emerging in countries outside the current tension zones, such as Southeast Asia and Europe. The impact on emerging technologies like artificial intelligence will also be significant. While countries like the United States and China continue to lead AI research, other economies are taking advantage of the vacuum created by this competition. The pursuit of cutting-edge technological alternatives in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and blockchain could create new technological leaders that redefine how global trade and services are conducted. However, the growing competition for rare resources such as lithium and cobalt, which are essential for emerging technologies, may also restrict the development of these technologies. China is currently the world's largest supplier of many of these resources, and tensions could lead to battles for supplies and increased costs of these crucial materials for the technology industry. In a landscape of global uncertainty, investors will also face a more volatile environment. Trade and political tensions can lead to sharp movements in the financial market, especially in the stocks of technology companies. The increase in import and export tariffs can affect companies with international supply chains, such as Apple, Samsung, and Huawei, which have China as a key production hub. These companies may need to adapt their production strategies or even relocate their factories to other countries to minimize the risks associated with political and commercial instability. Additionally, investors need to monitor the growing trend of de-dollarization, which has long-term implications for the digital currency and cryptocurrency markets. The increased use of digital currencies, such as the digital yuan, could affect the dominance of the dollar, altering the behavior of foreign exchange markets and, consequently, capital flows worldwide. Finally, trade tensions between major powers are not just a reflection of a temporary economic dispute, but a harbinger of a new era for global economies. The impact of these disputes will be felt for decades. How countries and companies adapt to this new scenario by seeking alternatives, diversification strategies, and new alliances will determine the future of the global economy. The interaction between technology, geopolitics, and trade will be more complex and interconnected than ever, and the coming years will be crucial in shaping a more multilateral, collaborative, and innovative world. In conclusion, trade tensions between major powers, especially between the United States and China, are not merely a matter of immediate economic interests but a restructuring of the global geopolitical landscape. The trade war, the battle for critical resources like semiconductors and rare materials, and the disputes over emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence are reshaping the global economic scene. These conflicts often go beyond simple tariffs and embargoes, reflecting a strategic struggle for technological dominance and the preservation of economic sovereignty. However, alternatives are being explored. Nations like the BRICS are seeking to reduce dependence on the dollar and create new financial cooperation mechanisms, which could profoundly transform the power dynamics in global trade. Although the tensions and challenges are clear, the future of global trade is, in some ways, open to new possibilities and opportunities, with emerging technologies opening doors to innovative business models and new partnerships. Therefore, more than ever, understanding the implications of these changes, both in the market and in the geopolitical field, is essential for those who wish to be prepared for the transformations of the global economic future. What is at stake is not just the trade of products, but the foundations of global power in the coming decades. If you have watched this far, subscribe and leave a like on the video. It would help me a lot. Thank you everyone, and see you next time.